Hi there and welcome to the channel, and it feels so great to be back. I never would have dreamed it would be a month-long absence. Sadly, I was struck down by a number of seasonal ailments. Firstly, I lost my voice for a couple of weeks, not exactly conducive to filming videos, and then I developed an eye problem. Again, not easy to be making video in such circumstances. However, all is now well. I am restored to perfect health, and so here I am. And to celebrate my return to health, I went out on a book buying expedition, spending money like the proverbial drunken sailor, and I also, once again, raided the shelves of the university library, and thus it's with a book haul that I mark my return. So, without further ado, let's dive in. We begin with two books by my favourite author, Thomas Bernhard. I bought these online. First, all the way from Germany came this. It's the original of what was published in English as Goethe Dies. I've already made a video about Goethe Dies in my Thomas Bernhard series. I thought I would take a look at the German. My German presently is not so great. It really needs some work, so it's a kind of long-term plan to really engage with this. Still, beautifully produced little hardback book there. Then the next one is in English. It's this similarly beautiful hardback from Siegel Books, who also published Goethe Dies. They're based in India. The translator this time is a different one to that. It's Douglas Robertson, and it's 5 pieces by the master. Haven't read any of this yet either. Can't wait to get started. Then books I bought here in Taipei City, and we have some art history. Firstly, the books that shaped art history, and this has a number of features that recommend it beyond the content. They are the wonderful paper. Yes, the paper is beautiful. The similarly beautiful typeface, and then there are lots of black and white illustrations too. I haven't got into this yet, but I look forward to doing so. The next one is also art history. It's the Bauhaus Group, 6 Masters of Modernism by Nicholas Fox-Weber. I've read the first 3 biographies, and they are of Walter Gropius, the founder of the Bauhaus, then Paul Klee, and finally Vasily Kandinsky. His chapter comes off rather badly, actually. He's something of a curmudgeon. However, the Paul Klee chapter is wonderful. Let me just show you some of the colour plates. Yeah, very nice. Very nicely produced book, even if it does have deckled edges. Okay, one more book on art, and that is a biography of Roger Fry by his great friend Virginia Woolf. This was very moderately priced. I've read the first few pages. It's beautifully written, as one would expect. Now, I only know a single picture by Roger Fry, but it's one of my favourites, and it's here adorning the cover of this biography of E.M. Forster. Yes, I've always loved the kind of flatness of this painting, so we'll enjoy that. That's a useful segue, actually, because next up we have some Virginia Woolf novels. Firstly to The Lighthouse, which I've already got, but no harm in having another edition. And then Oxford Classics of The Waves. All right, and I have 3 more classics from the modern library here to show you, and then we'll move on to some French books. They are The Arabian Nights, which I already have a number of copies of floating around too. Then this looks very promising. Short stories by Latin American writers. An amazing painting on the cover. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't say who it's by. Francesca Rota, but I can't read the title. Francesca Rota. Wonderful. First contribution is from Isabel Allende. I'm not sure who else is in here. Let's have a quick look. We've got Dora Alonso, Helena Araujo, Maria Luisa Bombal from Chile. Okay, it has their countries as well. Mexico, Bolivia, Puerto Rico. Okay, that is a book I'm truly excited to get into. And lastly, it's an absolute classic, The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. I don't know much about this actually. I suppose I could go and find a movie adaptation on YouTube and watch that first before giving it a try. All right, that is part 1. Now let's look at the French books I found. Okay, I've gone and found my glasses, so I won't subject you to the unsightly spectacle of watching me squint during the remainder of this video. Now, the first half of this stack is by the same author, Marguerite Duras, who I'm really into, and we begin with Summer Rain, one of her late novels, and actually I have managed to read this. It was the shortest novel I could find, so when my eye was getting better, I went through it, and it was really a very curious story. It had the incest motif that one finds in many of her novels, but it was just, it was, yes, magical like all of her writing. So I did really enjoy that. The others I haven't read yet, I'll just show them to you. We have the Vice-Consul, then Blue Eyes, Black Hair. This looks like some kind of tale of erotic obsession. Then in the original, Barrage, Contre, le Pacifique, which I have here in English as The Sea Wall. I believe the central character here is based on Duras's mother and her doomed attempt to make a go at farming out there in French Indochine. Then we have War. Don't know much about this. I have Le Douleur that I showed you, which does focus on the wartime period. This seems to have a journal format. We'll get into that in due course. Then some critical books on Duras. What is this? I don't know. Very uninspiring without its dust jacket. It's just called Marguerite Duras by someone named Glassman. Then more of her wartime writings. And finally, one more critical book. It's Martin Crowley. It's Duras Writing and the Ethical. Haven't got into this yet either. All right, moving on. A different female French author. It is Nathalie Sarraute. I think we say it's something like this. And it's her novel, The Planetarium. I've also dipped into this. And I have to say, it's really wonderful. It's a stream of consciousness affair. And we just move through the minds of various French characters. The first of whom is an eccentric author who's obsessing over her choices in interior decoration. And then we move on to a friend of hers, or I believe a family member. It may be her nephew, yes, at some kind of dinner party. And then we jump into another character's mind and so on. It's rather like Pedro Paramo by Juan Rulfo, but with something of Virginia Woolf mixed in. Yes, it's a really stimulating read. Next, some Genet novels. So, Notre-Dame-des-Fleurs, Our Lady of the Flowers, a simply amazing book by Genet. I haven't read it in the original French. I was looking at it, and I think this one I will be able to manage to get through. My French is good enough now. Then in English, a hardback of Funeral Rites, with a good photo there of this wonderful artist adorning the cover. I don't know why, but they've put the title on the back. That is very strange. Who can say why? Funeral Rites. Next, Balzac. Oh, it's the same novel, but I took 2 copies of it from the library. Pere Goriot. This. That's a Norton Critical Edition. And then an Oxford World Classics of the same book. I like the picture on the front of that. Yeah, that's beautiful. Who's that by? Oh, time for the glasses. Yeah, that was why I went and got those. It's by Louis Leopold Boilly. No, never heard of him. From 1822. Lastly, rather uninspiring in terms of the way they're assembled, these books, but they are the literary collections by Lagarde and Michard. This is the French equivalent of a Norton anthology, so I'm really happy to have these in physical form. I do have PDFs, but it's difficult to sit in front of the computer. What is this one? This one is the 19th century. And so here we have the Romantic Theatre, and I also have the one of the 18th century. Let's see. Can I tell you what's in here? Oh, this is just the historical part. Okay. Oh, Rousseau. Okay, that gives you an idea of what they contain. All right, let's move on to the next pile. There's no real overarching theme to what remains. It's literally what's left over. So we'll begin. And first we have this Desert Flower by Wiritng. I read this when I'd only lost my voice before my eyes packed in, and it was just wonderful. And I did set about scripting a video. It will be the next installment of life writing that I engage with. She became a supermodel in the 90s, I believe, and this traces her journey from her nomadic life in the deserts of Somalia to the runways of, Paris, New York, and Milan. And it's just such a great book. It was so interesting, and you'll learn all about it when I finally have produced my video on this. But it was a real surprise. I did not expect this book to be just as powerful as it was. Then another biography, and this is by someone called Basu Rai. It's probably a good idea he's not called Basu Ra, because that would be basura in Spanish, literally trash. So I don't think this is trash, but it's called From the Streets of Kathmandu, and it's edited by somebody. And basically it tells about how this guy led this really terrible existence in his early life. I believe he may have spent time even in jail, and then turned his life around and became an inspirational figure. So really looking forward to reading that. Then sociology from 100 or more years ago. This is just a great writer. It doesn't really matter about the sociological part, actually. He's just such a great writer. It's Thorstein Veblen with his The Theory of the Leisure Class. He wrote one of my favourite sociological essays on sabotage. That one is just magnificent. So I picked that one up. It's very cheap. Then another book that I've owned before, not sure what happened to it, but another great figure, Fernand Braudel, who started or was a leading member of the Physiocrats, a group of French historians with an emphasis on kind of economic history. And I have some of his other works, but this is just a short introduction that does exactly what it says. Gives you a history of civilizations, more non-fiction. This by Simon Winchester, The River at the Center of the World, this river being the Yangtze River there in China. And I do have another book by Simon Winchester. You get some great writing in this kind of popular non-fiction category. I found this hardback of his about Krakatoa. Great topic to choose to write about. I think this one does have some good pictures. Let me just flick through. I seem to recall not as many as I thought. Oh, no, just a few. Here's one. What is it with a kind of wall of water there in the foreground? That is a wall of water tsunami generated by only the most moderate of earthquakes on Krakatoa. Oh, terrifying. Okay. I've dipped into this, and the 10 or so pages I read were actually pretty satisfying. Non-fiction of a different kind, I guess. This is wonderful. It's by Daniel J. Burstyn, who wrote a phenomenal book called The Image, which is just an account, I say that, but so much more. But it looks at how mass-produced images have permeated society and transformed the way human beings think. This one is about history of heroes of the imagination. As you can see, I've already read a little. It begins with short chapters on Hinduism, Confucianism, and then the Greek Homeric epics, and then moves on to the birth of Christianity. It's just incredibly well written, and it's just really stimulating, and it's kind of just massive in its scope. Yeah, he is a really great writer. Then I was reading this as part of my research, so I picked it up from the library. It's another short book. It's sociological text. It's Freedom by Zygmunt Bauman, a wonderful sociologist who passed away a few years ago. He was from Eastern Europe. I don't want to say he was from Poland in case he was actually from Hungary, but I seem to recall he's from one of those two countries. He came up with the concept of liquid modernity. All right, that is useful. And then anthropology. This is because I'm doing some work on Denton Welsh, and this was mentioned. It's what kinship is and is not. And basically it makes the argument that kinship is constructed. It's cultural, not biological. And the book neatly divides between a chapter advancing why kinship should be considered cultural, and then a chapter saying why it should not be considered biological. It's full of really interesting detail. All right, a sci-fi novel. I told you this pile was rather random. It is Neil Stevenson, very tiny paperback here, and it's his Zodiac. I did try reading this back when it came out, and I kind of found the protagonist off-putting. He's rather smug, but this time round, I think I'll give it another try. His Snow Crash was absolutely fantastic. That's one of the best debut science fiction novels I've read. Then, again, a random purchase. It's Chalcott Crescent by Fay Weldon, written around, I'm not sure written when, I think it's 1990, but let's just check. Oh. No, it's much later, 2009. And it starts off, I've read just the first 2 pages while I was in the bookshop actually, and it has a very old lady hiding from the bailiffs with her grandson there, and he says, "Grandma, shall I go and get a blanket? I can wriggle down the stairs and the bailiffs won't see me." But Grandma, while consenting to this plan, believes it may just be a pretext for her grandson to go and roll a spliff. So that gives you an idea of the kind of comic situation that we're presented with at the start, and the kind of lower segment of society with which it's going to deal. We'll give that a read. A Japanese novel. I'm not really sure. I'm not really convinced by the cover here. I guess some people might find that poignant or beautiful or haunting. I don't. I think there's just something about the rosy cheeks of the girl there and the rather faded palette that I'm not really into. But Obasan, a novel from Joy Kagawa. Just one more to go with my selection of works by Japanese writers. Then a very old Norton Critical edition, but in great condition. It's Moll Flanders by Defoe. Obviously, I have many editions of this floating around, but this was on sale for $1 US, the equivalent of, so I couldn't resist. And finally, a few books, I think, from the library. Oh, and 2 purchases. Lawrence Stern's A Sentimental Journey. How many times have I seen this mentioned while reading articles and books and thought, oh, I'll get around to reading that one day? No, I believe I must get on with it, and this month will be the month when I finally read this book, this classic. Then Nat Hampson, The Wanderer, somewhat more substantial than the last novel of his I read, which was The Dreamers, which was one of the most perfect short novels I've ever had the pleasure of reading. A simply amazing artist. Then I've got this already, Thomas Hardy, Two on a Tower. This is beautifully written. It very much reminds me of Jane Austen. Wow. Yes, it has this doomed love affair between a young man who's a very keen astronomer and an aristocrat whose husband is off on some kind of exploration and is believed to have died. But all is not as it seems. That is just so romantic, has a beautiful ending as well. Yes, Two on a Tower. If you haven't read that, but you've read other Hardy novels, I sincerely recommend that one. And finally, to finish, poetry. It's one of those silver penguins, which are hard to resist, aren't they? And this one is W.B. Yeats. And I'll just let you know who that rather nice picture is by, on the front, it's The Lonely Tower. Okay, so 2 on a tower, and then we go to The Lonely Tower. 1875 by Samuel Palmer. Okay, now I really do like this picture. There's the owl. Perhaps it's the owl of Minerva flying there at midnight. But yes, that's just magical, isn't it? Okay, that is the rather monumental book haul for December. I hope you enjoyed going through that with me. Apologies if this presentation was a little rough around the edges. Please forgive me. It's going to take a little while to get back into the swing of things, but I do believe I am fully restored now, and it will be business as usual on the channel of A Disappointed Man, which means there's only one more thing remaining for me to do, and that's to bid you farewell in the customary fashion. Be safe, be strong, and I shall see you anon. Nanu nanu.